My name is Deanna Naples, and I was 28 when I learned the ugliest truth about my relationship. I was never his first choice. The realization didn't come from a fight or a breakup speech. It came from a party laughter echoing from the kitchen and one drunken sentence that sliced cleaner than any argument ever could. George and I had been together almost 3 years. I used to believe love was about showing up, about proving yourself. That if you listened when he was tired, remembered the things he mentioned in passing, supported his dreams, even when they sounded impossible, eventually he would stop looking over his shoulder. He would stop comparing me to the woman he thought he should have ended up with. That woman had a name, Sophia. She was his, almost but not quite the one who got away. At least that's how he always painted her. George never hid the fact that they had history wild, unpredictable, electric. He'd say it like a wistful joke after a few glasses of wine. Sophia knew how to keep me on my toes. "You're different, Deanna. Safe." Safe. He used the word like a compliment, but it always felt like a cage. We met at work back when I was temping in IT, and he was floating between marketing jobs. He said he liked my sarcasm. I liked that he actually listened to my rants about broken printers. Within weeks, we were inseparable, or at least I thought we were. I stayed by his side through everything, a failed startup, his dad's surgery, 2 last-minute apartment moves. I didn't stay because I wanted credit. I stayed because that's what you do when you love someone. You stay. But the cracks showed early. He'd order cocktails I didn't like, then tease me for being boring when I stuck to water. He'd scroll Instagram during dinners I'd spent hours cooking. And every so often, Sophia's name would slip through like a ghost in the room. She was complicated. But God, she was exciting. The night of the housewarming party, I'd already been tired from a long week at work. But George insisted we go. He wanted to show up together. So I curled my hair, put on the deep blue dress he once said was his favorite, and brought a bottle of the overpriced wine he liked. The apartment was buzzing with music bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, laughter rolling like waves. George poured drinks too quickly. He always claimed to be a lightweight with a dark streak. Usually I kept an eye on him, but this time I told myself to let him breathe. I was in the living room talking politely to a friend of a friend when I heard it. That sharp, high laugh he only did when he wanted to impress someone. My skin prickled. I turned, and there he was, leaning against the kitchen counter with 2 old college friends. And then his voice, too loud, too casual. "I mean, Deanna's sweet, but let's be honest. She was never my first choice. If Sophia had wanted me back then, I'd never have even looked at Deanna. But hey, it is what it is." He said it like he was describing a sandwich he didn't order, not the woman he came home to every night. The girls laughed awkwardly. One of them gave him a look like she couldn't believe he'd said that out loud. But George just kept talking, spinning stories about what could have been with Sophia, while I stood frozen in the doorway. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't even angry. It was worse and different, like I was background noise filler in the script of his life. I swallowed the knot in my throat, turned back to the half-empty drink in my hand, and forced myself to finish it. My ears were burning, but my face stayed calm. An hour later, he stumbled out of the apartment, tipsy smile plastered on his face like nothing had happened. "Ready to go, babe," he slurred, leaning against me like a child. I drove him home. Steady hands on the wheel, silent the entire way. 10 minutes in, he was out cold, head pressed against the window. I carried him inside, laid him on the bed, and pulled the blanket over his body. He didn't stir. I stood there for a moment, watching him breathe, wondering if he'd ever really seen me at all. By sunrise, I had my answer. I packed a duffel bag with the essentials clothes, my laptop charger, toothbrush. I left the key on the counter next to the wine glass he hadn't washed. No note, no explanation. He had already said enough. Walking out the door, I wasn't furious. I wasn't even heartbroken. It felt more like clarity, like finally noticing the water stain on the ceiling and realizing it had been there for years, you just didn't want to look up. And with that, I left. When the front door clicked shut behind me, I expected tears. I expected to crumble in the stairwell, shaking and gasping for air, but nothing came. Just silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty but sharp. A silence that says more than words ever could. George must have woken around 9 that morning, confused by the empty space beside him. My phone buzzed at 9:42 a.m. "George, hey, where did you go? Did you have to leave early for work?" I flipped the screen over, face down, on the borrowed nightstand in my short-term sublet. I didn't reply. An hour later, "George, Deanna. You didn't say anything. I woke up alone. Did something happen? You're scaring me." Still, I stayed silent. By noon, he was calling. I let it ring, watched the screen light up and fade over and over again. He didn't leave a voicemail. He rarely did. He hated evidence of vulnerability. At 4:17 p.m., another text. George, can you just let me know you're okay? I'm freaking out. The truth was, I was okay. More okay than I had been in years. Sitting cross-legged on the floor of a stranger's sublet, I ate takeout noodles straight from the carton and felt weightless. Over the next few days, the messages piled up. Confusion became guilt. Guilt became irritation. Irritation became anger. George. If something's wrong, at least be an adult and say it. George. Was it something I said at the party? Honestly? I don't even remember. George. If this is about Sophia, I was joking. You know that, right? Please don't let one dumb thing ruin us. That was the line that told me everything I needed to know. He remembered. He wasn't confused, he was cornered. He didn't think I heard him. Now that I had, he wanted to spin it as nothing. I didn't respond not once. Instead, I blocked him on Instagram, then Facebook, then Venmo, just to be thorough. It felt surgical, precise, clean, like plucking out a thorn that had been festering for years. The only thing I didn't delete was our shared Spotify playlist. Let him see the green icon vanish beside my name, replaced by silence. By the third day, friends began reaching out. Maya, mutual friend. Hey, Deanna, George has been asking about you. Says you disappeared. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a long time, thumbs hovering. Then I set the phone down. I didn't owe explanations. For years, I had been the explainer, the fixer, the one who smoothed over rough edges. Not anymore. And strangely, I slept better than I expected. The first night on the borrowed couch, I drifted into dreams without the usual anxiety clinging to my chest. No waiting for his texts, no worrying if he was comparing me to Sophia again, no rehearsing ways to be enough. In the silence, I finally heard something else, my own thoughts. By the end of the week, George's text shifted tone. George, you're really going to ghost me after everything we've been through. George, fine. If you're done, at least say so, instead of acting like a child. George, I'm sorry. Okay, I was drunk. It didn't mean anything. Each message came like a stone tossed into a lake, rippling briefly before sinking into nothing. He wanted a reaction. He wasn't going to get one. Because here's what he never understood. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all. By the second week, George's tone had shifted from apology to performance. I didn't need to answer his text to know what he was feeling. All I had to do was look at his Instagram. The first post was subtle, a photo of 2 dinner plates across from each other. Caption: Some people just get you. The second one was even less subtle, a blurry shot of a woman's hand holding a cocktail. No face, just the curve of a wrist with a thin gold bracelet. I scrolled right past it, because I knew the game. These weren't DDinations of love or new beginnings. They were bait hooks cast into the water meant for me to bite. I muted his account, but friends still sent me screenshots. Maya, Deanna. He's posting weird stuff. Looks like he's trying to make you jealous. I replied with a single thumbs up. No more energy wasted on explanations. Then the third week, the game changed. A familiar name appeared in his captions. One I'd memorized over 3 years of forced comparisons. Sophia. George wasn't hiding it anymore. He'd bumped into her at some gallery opening, apparently. At least that's what his photo suggested, the back of her head hair, gleaming under the lights, tagged in big, bold letters. The caption read, "Timing is everything." I stared at it for a moment, not because I cared, but because it was so predictable. This was the woman he once held up like a ghost between us. The wild one, the unforgettable one, the one I could never measure up to. And now she was back in the picture, or so he wanted everyone to believe. His feed turned into a slideshow of staged moments, wine glasses clinking, artsy shots of street murals, a close-up of Sophia's shoes stepping into a cab. It was almost funny how curated it all felt. I didn't feel jealousy, I felt relief, because every post was proof that he was still chasing a fantasy, and that I'd been nothing more than a placeholder while he dreamed of someone else. But here's what George didn't realize: fantasies rarely survive reality. And Sophia, she had her own plans. I found out through a text from my friend Kayla. Kayla, Deanna, did you see Sophia just got engaged? My chest didn't tighten, my heart didn't skip. Instead, a slow, strange smile spread across my face. Because suddenly the story wasn't about me anymore. It was about George finally forced to face what he'd been running after. At that moment, I understood something I should have known all along. George never really loved me, but he never really loved Sophia either. He just loved the idea of wanting what he couldn't have. When Sophia's engagement photos went public, George's online persona collapsed overnight. The cryptic timing is everything captions vanished. The curated wine glass, soft launches disappeared. Within days, his feed turned into something darker. Black screens, song lyrics about heartbreak, quotes about betrayal. The kind of posts that didn't cry out, "I'm happy." They screamed, "Please notice me." And notice people did. Mutual friends whispered, "Did you see George's stories? He's not taking this well." One even sent me a screenshot, a grainy selfie of George with red eyes captioned, "Sometimes the people you fight hardest for are the ones who break you the worst." The irony burned, but I didn't bite, because I knew those words weren't about Sophia. They were about me. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed with his name. I didn't pick up, but the messages rolled in one after another. "George, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I can't stop thinking about what we had. George, I know I said awful things, but they weren't true. Not really. I was scared. I didn't know how to be loved the way you loved me. George. Can we please talk just once?" I sat on my borrowed couch listening to the city hum outside the window and read each word with a steady heart. Not anger, not longing, just clarity. He wanted me to believe his pain meant something, but it didn't. He wasn't sorry for what he said. He was sorry I heard it. By the end of the week, his desperation had turned performative again. A black and white quote post. "Healing isn't linear. A grainy photo of his hand holding a whiskey glass drowning doesn't always look like water. And the most predictable one of all, no one ever deserved me." I didn't watch them directly, but my friends did, and they relayed every detail. "Maya Deanna, I think he's unraveling. Maybe you should just text him." I shook my head. Text him for what? To hand him the closure he didn't give me. No. I'd spent years holding space for George's storms. I wasn't going to stand in the rain again. Late one evening, though, he crossed a line. A knock at my door. Firm, uneven, not polite. I froze. The peephole confirmed what I already suspected. George. Hair messy, hoodie, wrinkled eyes, red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept. I didn't open it. Not yet. But something told me this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of his unraveling. The pounding on my door wouldn't stop. Not loud enough to wake the neighbors, but uneven, desperate. I hovered in the hallway, hand on the knob, debating whether to open it. My heart wasn't racing the way it once did when George lost his temper. Instead, it beat steady, like I already knew how this scene would play out. Finally, I turned the lock. The door swung open a few inches, and there he was. George looked nothing like the man I once introduced proudly to friends. His hair was unwashed hoodie hanging off his shoulders, eyes swollen and raw. "Deanna," he rasped, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer, just stepped aside. He shuffled in, glancing around the small apartment like it offended him. No trace of him here, no framed photos, no forgotten jacket on the chair, just clean counters, folded blankets, and silence. He sat on the edge of my couch like it might collapse under him. "I miss you," he whispered. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent. He tried again, louder this time. "I know I screwed up. I said awful things, but you have to understand, I was drunk. I was just showing off in front of old friends. That's not how I really feel about you." I tilted my head, studying him the way you study a stranger at a train station. "You were always good to me," he went on, voice cracking. Steady. "You cared about me when no one else did. I see that now. I didn't deserve it, but I see it." Tears welled in his eyes. He was waiting for me to jump in to soften, to offer him absolution. I said nothing. He ran his hands through his hair. "After you left, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I kept thinking you'd come back, that we'd fix it, but you just vanished. And Sophia. She was never what I thought she was. She didn't want me. She never wanted me. I chased a fantasy and lost the only real thing I had." He leaned forward, eyes pleading. "I was stupid, Deanna, but I'm here now. I'm asking you, please just talk to me." There it was, the shift from arrogance to desperation. The same mouth that once told a room full of people I was never his first choice was now begging me to be his only choice. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "You're not sorry for what you said, George. You're sorry I heard it." His face crumpled instantly. "No, that's not true." I cut him off. "You knew exactly how you saw me. You just never thought I'd walk away." He shook his head, tears spilling now. "I do miss you. I do. You were everything to me, Deanna. I was just scared. I didn't know how to handle being with someone good." "Then go figure that out somewhere else," I said, standing straighter. He clutched his knees, shaking. "Don't do this. Don't throw us away." I stepped closer to the door hand on the knob. "I didn't throw us away. You did. The night you called me safe like I was a consolation prize, you made your choice. I opened the door wide. The hallway light spilled in. We're not talking again. We're not friends. We're not reconnecting. We're nothing. George's breath hitched. He covered his mouth, trying to hold back a sob, then stood shakily. He looked at me like he wanted to scream, but no words came. He walked out slowly, shoulders slumped, and I closed the door behind him gently, not with anger, but with finality. The lock clicked. For the first time, I felt truly free. Months passed. Seasons shifted. My life, once heavy with his presence, grew light. I moved into a brighter apartment, cut my hair shorter, took on new projects at work. People said I looked different, like I'd been carrying a secret weight, and finally set it down. The truth was I had. So when an invitation arrived for a friend's engagement party, rooftop lounge downtown, champagne and string lights, I didn't hesitate. That night I slipped into a new suit-style dress, tailored and sharp. My reflection looked back at me with steady eyes. Not the Deanna who once begged silently for scraps of affection, but a woman who chose herself. The rooftop was buzzing with music and laughter, familiar faces, glasses, clinking, the city skyline glowing. I found myself mid-conversation with friends when I felt it. A stare. I turned and froze. George. He stood across the terrace holding a plastic cup of water like it was fine wine. His smile looked painted on his skin, pale under the string lights. He saw me at the exact same moment. His eyes widened, then narrowed. For a second, he hesitated. Then, like he couldn't stop himself, he began walking toward me. Deanna, he said, voice strained as if he hadn't spoken in days. George. My tone was even, almost polite. You look good, he stammered. Thanks. There was a pause. Awkward silence pressing between us, while laughter and music swirled around. I didn't expect to see you here, he added. Yeah, I said, sipping my drink. Most people don't. He shifted, uncomfortable. Then almost too quickly, I've been meaning to say, I'm happy for you. I heard you've been doing well. I am. The words landed heavy final. His throat worked. Do you ever think about us? I met his eyes steady. A small half-smile tugged at my lips. Not cruel, just honest. Only when someone asks me why I stayed single for a while. The blow hit harder than I expected. His face faltered like he'd been slapped in public. You don't have to be mean, he whispered. I'm not, just telling the truth. For the first time, he didn't fight back. He just stood there, eyes, glassy lips pressed tight like he wanted to scream but couldn't risk the scene. Finally, he nodded once. Okay. Well, I guess I'll see you around. I tilted my head. I don't think you will. And with that, I turned, walking back into the circle of laughter, leaving him alone at the edge of the rooftop. He stayed there staring after me, but I didn't look back. I didn't watch George after I walked away. Maybe he was still standing in that corner. Maybe he was drowning in his own silence. It didn't matter. Because across the rooftop, under strings of warm light, someone waved me over. Deanna. There you are, my friend, Natalie grinned, tugging me toward a small group. I've been dying to introduce you to. And that's when I met him, Evan, a friend of the groom. We'd crossed paths once in a group chat, trading sarcastic jokes, but this was the first time face-to-face. Tall, understated, with an easy smile that didn't feel rehearsed. Finally, he said, offering his hand. So you're the Deanna who sends memes at 2 a.m. I laughed, genuine and unguarded. The kind of laugh I hadn't realized I'd missed. We talked. About work. About books. About the best late-night street food in the city. It was effortless. No sharp edges, no ghosts of someone else looming between us. For the first time in years, I wasn't scanning for comparisons or hidden daggers in someone's words. I was just there, chosen present enough. From the corner of my eye, I knew George was watching. His posture stiff, his plastic cup clutched too tightly. But I never turned toward him, not once. Because the truth was, I didn't win by making him regret. I didn't win by proving I was worth more than safe. I won by walking away, by letting silence speak louder than begging ever could. By the time he realized it, I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was just done. And that's when I knew I had really won.